physical aspect, it's being everything shut down. How about yourself? Are your family okay?
All well, thankfully.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
good.
we are seeing a clear need for counseling our team. And to be honest, my days aren't always great. So, yeah,
That's good to hear. Yeah. Well, the important thing is to stay safe, as you know.
I agree. I agree.
Well, how can I help today, Anand?
I'd like to share one of our products, SlideSense, with you, Jen, and get your feedback on how exactly we might be able to take this to the market. So, specifically,
Okay.
what I wanted to do was explain what we see as first I explain what we do and why we are doing it, which is the value proposition. I shared a few questions on email, which I'll walk through again and take your inputs. I'll start by sharing my screen. In terms of timing, I thought I'll keep this presentation to maybe about 10 minutes or less and leave the bulk of the time for discussion. I'm going to share my screen to let me know when it's visible. Is it visible yet?
Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Okay, great. So the product's name is SlideSense, and it focuses on creating presentations from data. Problems that we see that this solves is, one, clients don't necessarily have the same BI tools as the organizations that we work with. When sharing reports with vendors, with clients, with partners, even with other teams, there is a problem of, does that mean we need to buy licenses for them? And the current alternative is to copy paste those screenshots into a presentation or export them as PDFs. If required, customize it and send it through. And what SlideSense effectively offers is basically BI on PowerPoint. The idea being distribution is taken care of. That solves some problems, that creates some problems. Arguably, that is where we are today, and BI tools were in fact created to solve the problems that this creates. However, we see this need continuing, and that BI tools are getting into the space and stepping back. Secondly, we find that, let me quote one of our clients who said, we have a team of 25 people whose job it is to take the work that 40 Tableau developers from one of our partner organizations create and copy paste that into PowerPoint because we want to be able to annotate it. We want to be able to edit it. We want to be able to comment on it. And the result is ultimately a workflow as part of a larger deck. And that's not something that these tools support, but SlideSense automatically creates these presentations in a way that can be edited directly by these teams. Before I go further, I think it's time I showed you some of the output that we've created to give you a feel for it. So let me start with something that we had created for Procter & Gamble.
Okay.
Their question was, can we have our board presentations run interactively, but editable offline because we want to be able to comment on it? So this is a deck that in PowerPoint that I'm sharing that was generated by SlideSense, where I'm showing you the anonymized result, where they took their geographic revenue breakup, broke it further by channel, direct partners and stores, and further by product. So the size of each of these bars is the sales of that particular segment. And against each of these segments, we have the overall performance on an accelerate, grow, catch up scale. So for example, product 9 in the stores channel in UK is not doing so well. Is that because product 9 is not doing well in general? Product 9, and it turns out that that's correct. Product 9 is performing poorly across geographies and channels, with the sole possible exception of this segment, which is yellow, the partners channel in Japan. Why is that? Is that because the partners channel is generally doing well? They click on that and they see the performance of the partners channel, effectively allowing them on the one hand to run this interactively like any BI tool, but on the other hand, to be able to take any one of these segments and say, out here, that's not exactly where I want it to be. I really want to highlight this in a different color. I want to put in my own annotation into it, and make a note saying this is what's happening in that particular area. And all of this space was really reserved for their commentary on what's happening, why, etc. And this was part of a larger deck. Another piece that we had done, let me share that. This is again an anonymized example with some old data, but we were working for an organization that was looking at their application store downloads. And this is the presentation that we shared with them for exploration. I'm showing you with some very old data, but what it shows is the breakup of revenue and downloads by country, followed by the breakup by model, by category and segment, allowing with the size being the number of downloads, the color being the growth, allowing them to answer the question, why is, for example, Android 4, which is in yellow, not growing as fast as iOS 4, by clicking on it. And that shows that it's primarily because games as a category are pulling it down, and education and tools, which are the top 3 categories, don't seem to be helping either. And despite some support from music and video, which has been growing by around 3% or so, it hasn't been able to move up much. Why aren't games growing? Why are music and videos growing? Why is Windows growing? And so on, is something that they can explore. And similarly, let me go to one of the tree map representations. This is an alternate way of exploring the same structure, where if you look at it by category, education is not doing so well because the cameraman segment and the picky segment are pulling it down, but games are not doing particularly well either. But the newbie segment is doing okay, mainly because of the growth from these kinds of assets. So these are examples where this kind of an output is being customized for every single user and in a way that is distributable. So they would be able to send it to their partners, and therefore their clients and partners didn't have to buy the BI tools with annotation that they were able to make directly in PowerPoint. But the thing that we found most powerful was we also added an automated insights module into this. One of the projects we were doing was for an e-commerce client who said, we want to send our 80 odd vendors reports on their funnel, but also add an insight on why exactly they have a drop. In other words, effectively automating the McKinsey style of consultative presentations with the title summarizing the message, except that it's automated, allowing people to edit and add commentary, but the insights are personalized and generated by SlideSense. And the fourth is that the visuals that we have in the portfolio are both interactive and fairly sophisticated. I wouldn't even say sophistication is the hallmark. They are entirely a function of the domain. So if we need to create something that's rich and we make whatever is necessary for the domain. What we are offering here is primarily a platform that through customization, largely using PowerPoint itself, can be configured to take data and create multiple presentations, repetitive elements in these with insights that churns out PowerPoint. Or thinking about it another way, BI in PowerPoint. This is the product itself. Before I go further, any questions or comments?
Can you go back to the insights, the automated insights? Can you go back to that?
Sure.
I guess I'd want to drill in a little bit more on that because where you say key insights, that's more seems like recommendations versus insights as to what it means. And so I separate the two. One is more descriptive about what people are looking at, and the other is based on what you're seeing or based on what the data is saying, here would be the recommendations in terms of actions to take. And I think you have to separate those two things because they are relevant, they are related, but they're two different pieces of information for your audience.
That's a very fair point. There are 4 kinds of annotations that we normally use. Let me just locate the slide that has the structure of annotations that we. Okay, here I think this has the structure. So when it comes to any element, and this is an example where we're showing a chart of the number of marks, the number of students scoring a specific mark ranging from 0 to 100. Of the 4 types of annotations we use, one is an explanation, purely descriptive, explaining what's happening. So this chart shows data for classroom students in this particular geography for this particular subject, and we find that.
Yeah.
The second is a summary, which is still descriptive, but more inferential. It's effectively of the various things that could be observed from this. The one that is most interesting from a data perspective, meaning statistically significant, and the most relevant from a business perspective, typically based on rules that are domain dependent. That's what gets added here. The third is highlights. That could be done in a number of ways. Colors, arrows pointing to specific spots. In this case, we say, hey, there's a spike here and there's a dip here, and that's unusual. And the fourth is a recommendation, effectively suggesting an action on what people should do. So you're right, we do distinguish between these. And I haven't been using the word insight to differentiate between these, but I acknowledge that there is a definite difference between these.
Well, and one of the ways you may want to describe it is much more of a narrative description. And then, a guided recommendation, as to what to look at, what it means. So, maybe that's a way of sort of discerning between the two. But okay, it looks like you have both elements here, especially as I see it related to the slides, which is great to see.
Anything else that I can clarify on this?
On number 4, you say the visuals are not engaging. So if we can go back to number 4.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, and you talk about animations. It's really more interactivity. Would that be a better way of describing it?
Yes, in the context of what I just showed. Let me share another example, which is now I'm kind of getting into code, but let me share with you a makeover that we did of a visual by Nathan Yao, which was submitted for information is beautiful. So this has the leading causes of death by age, which is self-running pure animation. So
I see. Okay.
So that's something that we've download.
I see. So you do have that ability so that I can see, over time, like, maybe looking at 100 years, how the leading cause of death has changed over time. I see. So more of for like an infographic.
Correct. So what you see here is the point equivalent of that, which is self-run.
Gotcha. No, this is a cool feature. I've seen something like this over time, which is great to see. The one thing is also, is it possible to add some type of graphics in the cells?
Oh,
so that I can see a heart condition versus an accident. So I'm not just looking at just text, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I believe we have a sample of that here. So, okay, these are relatively simple, but yeah, effectively micro charts where it's an indicator. But in terms of complex visuals that have small multiples, short answer is yes, absolutely. I'm just trying to see if we have a good example of that. Probably not right this instant, but well, maybe arguably this is a somewhat simplified structure where we took one row and repeated that row, but effectively each row in the structure is a composite that contains an image, a graphic, and text. But yeah,
so in theory, I mean, if I wanted to look at how the data changed over, say, a year or two during the campaign, I would see people, the actual rows move up or down, and the image of Bernie Sanders would move up or down, perhaps.
Exactly. In fact,
Okay.
let's see if I can pull up something. Okay, I do have this, but I may have, I have a video of something that we did on PowerPoint that would probably be even more effective.
Okay.
Let's turn off the audio here. But yeah, this is a direct output from SlideSense. I'm going to skip the less interesting parts. So, yeah, it starts with the actors that were top grossers in the movies starting from 1979. And the narrative is a bit slow, so but then
that's fine. Yeah,
it goes on to show the movement in a smooth animated way across all the way up to the year 2000.
And the annotation with Robert Redford, was that added manually or was that auto-generated by the tool?
No, that was not auto-generated by the tool. We didn't have anywhere near enough data to be able to figure that out. That was added manually.
I gotcha. I see. Okay.
This is manually added as well. I say manually in the sense that the text was generated manually, but the layout and the positioning is automated. So the person decides what the text needs to be and the rest flows.
So quick question on this. I see the bar is different for Harrison Ford or Carrie Fisher. Is this reflective of movies that they were in and then grossing up the movies that they were in? Is that how this is being measured? So Harrison Ford was in more movies than Carrie Fisher, and hence that's the reason Harrison Ford's bar is bigger?
It's the total revenue box office gross collections of all of the films they have acted in any role whatsoever. So it may be fewer movies. No, cumulatively up to that year, historically.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. All right. Now that makes sense.
And not adjusted for inflation.
All right.
There is a recency bias.
Gotcha. I see. No, this is cool. Okay. We don't have to play the rest of it, but it gives me an idea of what you guys have done. Some really cool examples. I like it because, I think the examples do a good job of showcasing, what's possible, not just sort of a standard PowerPoint and even just interactivity, but you've answered my question about animations as well. So thank you.
We did have a few questions on this. First was, PowerPoint is seen as a somewhat outdated tool, but on the other hand, we see it still being the most popular way in which data is presented. Do you think are we betting against a shrinking market if we were to get into the space actively?
Well, I mean, you pretty much have between Google, the productivity tools, PowerPoint, and then also, Apple with the Keynote as an example. But I don't know. It seems like there's still a lot of PowerPoint users at this juncture, and I don't cover, the office productivity tools as much, but my own personal bias is that, PowerPoint is still something that is very popular. And unless you have someone who's completely a Mac shop, it seems to be the safe bet at this point.
Got it. But that actually got me curious. So what areas do you focus more on, Jim?
Analytics and BI. So I'm much more covering, in fact, more data science and machine learning, some elements of AI. But I look at it more from just the broader market. And then I have colleagues like Craig Roth that cover office productivity tools. They don't cover analytics, but he covers, looking at how big the market is going for like Office 365 compared to some other tools, as an example.
Got it. I understand. Another thing that I was curious of. Sorry, go on, please.
Well, I was going to ask, who else have you showed this to at Gartner so far? Who else has seen it?
No one. Who should we be showing it to?
Well, there's a couple of people, one of which is a guy named James Richardson. And, I look at this as what we call data storytelling. In other words, rather than, a lot of BI tools, they put all this information on a dashboard. But, the problem is not everybody has access to that BI tool. And, okay, you can get a PDF and send it around or report. But it doesn't really give you the narrative. It doesn't. If someone's not as skilled in looking at the dashboard, they may not be able to interpret it correctly. And so the idea of using PowerPoint as one example is you can create a series of slides, PowerPoint slides, that tell a story. And so you get the charts, you get the narrative, and then what you guys provide that's different than some of the others is it's not a static PowerPoint. You can interact with it. You can add, annotations as an example, but the elements of the storytelling are there in your product. So James has been writing about research around data storytelling. The other person is Alan Duncan. Alan has been writing about this. Alex Linden has been looking at it, data storytelling around data scientists. So that would be another one. And then a lady by the name of Rita Salam has been covering this as well to a certain extent. So those are the ones that come to mind at this point. And I call it data storytelling. What you guys are offering right now looks like more of a standalone tool, and I don't know what's involved to set up the data behind the scenes to support this. But is it possible for you to run on top of Tableau or Click or Power BI as well?
We know we can run on top of Power BI. We are exploring integrations with Tableau and Click. The only thing that it takes is being able to move the data out, any filtered data set out of the platform into a REST API call, and the remaining is taken care of by our platform. So integrations do appear possible. We haven't done any though. To be fair, we hadn't thought much about it. What possibilities do you see?
Well, I mean, in some ways, what you don't want to be doing is competing against BI tools. So if someone has a favorite BI tool and says, geez, I love your PowerPoint capabilities, can I plug it in? So then you remove that objection, because now it's another way of taking that Tableau data and putting it into a format that is more consumable by non-Tableau users. But, if someone does not have a BI tool, then, you also can support those users. So I think it gives you more flexibility and it shows as you complementing whatever BI investments they've had. The other thing that comes to mind is a lot of organizations have multiple BI tools. And so, there might be one group that's using Click, another that's using Tableau, another using Excel for that matter. But what you're able to do is say, it doesn't matter what BI tool you have, you get a consistent look and feel and a way of communicating these insights regardless of tool choice. So whereas there's some, obviously PDF and PowerPoint capabilities with some of these other BI tools, you're removing the dependency on whatever BI tool is being used. And you're also making it much more agnostic.
That's an interesting point.
So those are a couple things that come to mind. And, you have sort of the narrative, the recommendations, which is increasingly important. We have this term called augmented analytics. Have you heard of this term?
We have, yes.
Okay. So Rita Salam has been writing a lot around that, but the idea is, augmented analytics is alternative ways to consume information, but it's also the fact you're not just providing static graphics and charts. You're providing useful information as it relates to narratives as well as guided recommendations. So you guys would qualify as sort of an augmented analytics capability in my mind. And then the third thing I was going to bring up is, how do you position and message this? Is going to be really around you're helping increase the data literacy of an organization. You're helping to create a data-based culture, because what you've done is you've adapted the analytics tools to the users rather than forcing the users to have to adapt to the BI tool. At least that would be my voiceover, right? So as more and more organizations are trying to increase that data literacy, you are an enabler. Everyone's familiar with PowerPoint. Now what you're doing is allowing people to consume this data and charts in a way that is very easy for them to understand. Combine the charts and the annotations, the narratives, and the guided recommendations. So it's putting it into natural language rather than just providing just charts. It's the combination of both.
Got it.
So I'll send you some links to some research as it relates to this data storytelling and data literacy, because I think that becomes the hooks. And then what I would do is encourage you to schedule time like we had today with James Richardson and Rita Salam as the sort of the two people to reach out to, because I think you'll get some feedback, and it's important for them to be aware of what you've created. Is this generally available at this point?
It is. However, it's not something that we've documented the full capability and exposed the full capability for. But yes, as a product, to our clients, yes, it is generally available.
I see. How long does it take to install and get it up and running? In your experience so far?
So mine is probably biased as one of the people that's very close. So it usually takes me about 5 minutes to install it. You saw the visualization that I showed for Nathan Yao, right? That tutorial end to end. I mean, even writing that tutorial and creating that makeover took half an hour.
Okay.
Writing it. But
you still have to figure out the chart type, whether it's going to be a sound key or some other chart type, right? Someone still has to make that decision. And if yes. I wanted to switch between one chart type to another, you didn't show that, but is that something just sort of easy to replace right inside PowerPoint?
No, and it's something that, so the way we do it is we have the user create one PowerPoint presentation and a set of configurations. The first is a template, on which the configurations are applied, and it's a new result.
Okay.
Which can be modified as individual elements, so the shapes can be edited, but not structures. So you've got to go back to the template or change the configuration and rerun it, which means that any post-facto annotations are not preserved, which is a gap. And at the moment, the chart structures are not seamless enough that people can switch between them.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's something perhaps down the road to think about with clients. You almost the clients have to really know what they want to see for the model to work at this point. But, I'm sure you'll get some feedback and that'll be something you address. Well, Anand, I know we're out of time today, but this was very interesting for me. Hopefully some of the feedback was also helpful for you as well.
It was. Thanks so much, Jim. I'll set up time with the others. We have spoken with James before, but not on this, and I'll make sure that I reach out to the others too.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be very interested in this. And meanwhile, I'll send you links to some of the research around again, data storytelling and data literacy, because I think those are the two hooks that I see for how to position and message what you're doing.
Thank you. Have a good day, Jim.
You're welcome. You do the same. Bye now.